Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Peter Clausi about what's happening in the state of the marijuana market in Canada. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you today?
I've noticed a number of the medicinal marijuana and hemp stocks that actually moved downwards. Can you tell us what's going on?
I think there's a lot of uncertainty in the market right now, and not for the reasons most people expect. Right now there are two decisions in the court system, and until those two decisions are resolved, I don't think we'll have any certainty in the market. The first decision is in the Supreme Court of Canada, having to do with compassionate care clinics and the right to ingest marijuana in a form other than smoke. Do we have a constitutional right to eat it, flake it, bake it? And until that's resolved, we're not sure how to implement the marijuana products that have been authorized by the doctors. The other problem is the Allard decision in the Federal Court of Appeal. As we've written about before, the old MMARs, that's the old system of grow your own, are still in existence due to the prior court ruling. And until the Federal Court of Appeal rules on whether those 45,000 users must move over to the new system or not, there's a great deal of uncertainty in the system. Until we see decisions from the Federal Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court of Canada, I do think those stocks will trend downwards.
What do you anticipate happening? Can you make any kind of forecast on what you expect?
I can draw comparisons in the Smith decision to the Paul Magder-Furs decision. Paul Magder kept his stores open on Sunday, even though he knew it was against the bylaw. Finally, when his case made it to the Supreme Court of Canada, the Supreme Court said, you knew it was wrong and you did it anyways, you must suffer the consequences of that. There is a parallel to be drawn with the unfortunate Mr. Smith. He ran a compassionate care clinic. He knew that what he was doing was in violation of the law, but out of his sense of justice and his sense of community ethics, he did it anyways. It's hard to predict which way the Supreme Court of Canada will go, but the Magder-Furs decision does point us in a direction.
I have a question for you. I've noticed there's been a number of rising plays that are coming out of international locations, and they are targeting the Canadian audience. How do you think they're going to fare versus the Canadian locations where they'll be growing it in greenhouses, for instance?
It's very jurisdictional driven. In the United States, for example, the licensing is being governed state by state. Lurking in the background is the RICO Act and the IRS. There's some weird parts of the Internal Revenue Services Code that don't allow some of the marijuana producers to have the deductions you would otherwise get, which means their after-tax income is so much lower. In jurisdictions outside the United States, in Israel, in Russia, in Portugal, it will all be driven by the jurisdiction. The ability to access Canadian capital is good, but it doesn't really determine the success of the business plan.
You've brought a very interesting point here to the forefront. I'd like to talk to you about raising capital for this sector right now. How are they currently doing? What is the trend? I mean, obviously the stocks are trending downwards, but are they still able to raise capital?
The private companies that are MMPR applicants seem to be doing okay. They're not raising the same amount of money they had before, but then again, the same amount of money is not needed because much of the build-outs have been completed. There is not the same pool of capital as has been available in the past, but the pool continues to exist.
Do you have some rising stars that you've been watching?
I do, but until we get a court decision from the Supreme Court of Canada and the Federal Court of Appeal, it would just be blind guesses.
Peter, thank you so much for joining us today.
Always nice to see you.